going to kind of run through it and basically sort of convey the key points. So people often, I mean, I don't even know if I have to tell anyone this story anymore because mostly people understand why we deal with women. We're an NGO. We started off life as a social business that actually works with women artisans, so women who already have a craft skill, and teaches them how to leverage that for a sustainable revenue. So the kind of theory of change that we're operating on is that when women have access to their own resources, they have a powerful influence and an important influence not only in their own households, in their own families, but also in kind of, they begin to take on a sort of value and influence in their entire communities. And the sort of the problem that we're dealing with is that the reason why that's so important is that there's a lot of, you know, poverty. There's lots of research about how women are the poorest people on earth, how women have, in many countries, they're not allowed to inherit land, they can't own property. So there's really still a lot of very important poverty issues around that are specific to women, that women are really kind of victims of a lot of the sort of things that are associated with results of poverty. So we focus on women both because the problem is more acute with them, and also because the kind of the driver for change is also really powerful when you focus on women. So this is kind of our solution to the large problem, which is poverty, which really acutely affects women. We empower them to sustainably generate their own revenue. And this is kind of a little bit a slide on what's called the multiplier effect, which is sort of a little bit what I alluded to before, the fact that when women are beginning to make their own revenue, it influences positively their own homes, right? So women begin to, I've worked with women in Africa who are like kind of lying to their family members and their husbands about the revenue that they're making so that they can secretly keep their daughters in school. So there's those kinds of very concrete things that are happening in families. And then there's the kind of the slow growth, which is that women begin to have more influence in their communities and begin to affect more positive change kind of at a higher level. So it's really everything from, hey, I bought my kid sneakers so she could walk to school, all the way up to increases in GDP. Okay, so this is kind of the multiplier effect. When you invest in women, you get a big bang for your buck. So our vision and mission, we're working really our goal is to empower women kind of around the world. We're working right now in Latin America. We're not restricted to Latin America, but that is where our projects have been recently. So what we do is actually we run a kind of an entrepreneurship boot camp. And it's like a 5-day super intensive nightmarish program where you're working all the time from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. We focus on these two pieces, product innovation and markets. The women we work with, we don't like parachute in skills. We actually work with women who already have a lot of technical skills. They are just kind of lacking the piece where they figure out how to access markets. They access and markets, kind of deal with clients, adapt sort of a market need to adapt their product to a market need, and so on. So that's kind of the pieces that we work in. We do, we start off with a needs assessment, then we do what's called our asset program, the Artistri social entrepreneurship training. That's the 5-day intensive that I just told you about. That 5-day program, the graduates of that 5-day program are automatically enrolled into a 1-year coaching program where we coach them remotely through sort of a series of kind of homework assignments which actually parallel their business development, their natural sales and production cycle. So we're helping them basically throughout the year sort of integrate and develop habits that they learn during the program so that they can integrate them kind of into their actual business. So that's the 1-year coaching program. This year, actually, I just came back literally 4 days ago from Chile, where we were implementing a project among the Mapuche women there, and we piloted a train the trainer program. So we're now taking our graduates through the process where they can become the trainers of the actual program. Then, so after a year, we do an evaluation. We assess 2 kinds of outcomes. We assess business outcomes. So the kind of big one is sales, like what's the increase in actual revenue. And we assess empowerment outcomes. And those we look for a variety of things. We look for, women kind of increasing their implication in their involvement in community and politics, that kind of stuff. So here's like some more info about those things that I've just said to you. There are the outcomes. Actually, the outcomes sort of amazingly are the business outcomes are really growing kind of exponentially. So we started off with about an average of 50% increase in sales over 1 year. And we're now looking at, I don't have the final numbers on the averages, but we're looking at between 100 and 200% increases in sales in the course of 1 year. So that's, if you can just imagine, I don't know how many people are gainfully employed here, but if you can imagine sort of doubling your income, it's pretty significant. And we are looking at, also we have a lot of other kinds of success stories that I will just tell you about. We have women increasing access to financial services, women taking out loans, building their own homes, women who are able to now send their children to school, providing employment. We have Monica, who's had to hire other people in her village. We have several graduates who have gone on to train other women, other artisans. We have women who, the middle one, Verna, this super shy, shepherd. A lot of the women we work with actually control the whole supply chain. So they're raising the animals, then shearing the animals, then kind of processing the fibers, and then creating textiles. We mostly work with textile workers because that's what women do typically throughout the world. And this middle one, Verna, who's super shy and very quiet, and she then became manager of a retail store, and she was able to send from her. So her daughter, who was being her 9-year-old daughter, was being raised by relatives in the middle of nowhere, and she was able to send for her and raise her herself. So there's a lot of kind of really powerful and moving stories that have happened to the women within the kind of space of the year after the program. So that's kind of the work that we're doing. Sorry, I guess I don't know how to get that off, but I'll just leave that there. So that's the work that we're doing now, and it's very exciting because we're looking at kind of handing off full ownership of the program to women in Chile within the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years. So we've just piloted that, as I say, a Train the Trainer program. So that's kind of the work that we do at Artistri Sud, and so that's that. That's that piece. So people sometimes ask me why I started this crazy thing, because I actually had a super good job. So I lived most of my life as an educator teaching, and then I'm a historian. That's my background. So one of the things that's very interesting to me in the world, although it's not that interesting to everybody, but one of the things that's interesting is that craft traditions, so there's really a lot of technical skills, a lot of knowledge that is being lost because the market won't actually pay for it, right? So we've mechanized so many things. Textile production used to be incredibly important. Many people live in homes made of textiles, not to mention that we're all wearing textiles. I mean, it's really critical, and it has been critical for the last 20,000 years since women have been creating textiles, but it's the kind of thing that doesn't really get a lot of notice because we've mechanized those things. So for me personally, that was something that was very important to me, and it happens that I also have a background in material culture. I'm a historian. I know some stuff about women's roles and what things that women create. And so that was part of when I actually left my job to do this, I was working for National Historic Sites, which is kind of as a historian, I had a super good job. I was working for National Historic Sites. I had this kind of cool hybrid job where I was a historian / communications manager, looking at finding the women in our National Historic Sites. I don't know if you know this, but the women are lost in our National Historic Sites. There aren't any. If you think of them, battlefields, canals, think of all the National Historic Sites in Canada, there are no women there. So I was in this super cool job doing that. But I had a couple of revelations. One thing was I traveled to the developing world, and I really felt that there was some opportunity. I just felt kind of face to face. I came face to face with the fact that I had opportunities that I had for no good reason. I had opportunities that other people around the world didn't have. And so my personal story was about kind of the journey trying to figure out how I could have an impact. So how I personally could contribute to change and sort of, balancing the kind of playing field a bit. And so I gave up my super cushy job at the government and launched a social enterprise. And it was actually, now it's a registered charity, but it started off life as an actual social enterprise. So I was working with women in developing countries, buying things from them, and then selling them in an actual store, a bricks and mortar store. I know it's so retro, but it's true. So that's kind of how I got to this. And I guess I think that people often ask me how to get involved, how can they sort of get involved in things and make a difference. And I think that really people have to do what moves them. I don't have a special, I don't know why, I was asked to comment on why youth should get involved or how could youth find more power, but I'm not really sure. I frankly don't really know why we're having a conversation about why youth should get involved. I guess it's because they're not very involved. I just heard that statistic more recently, but it's hard for me to imagine because I work with about 25 young student volunteers from McGill every year. So to me, it seems like all youth is very involved. But I just think that we're not nothing. I think that good kind of emanates from what you're doing in the world. So if you see something, then that moves you, you need to kind of get involved. Otherwise, nothing happens. So although I think it's important for youth to get involved, I also think it's important for everybody to get involved. And I would just kind of encourage anyone to not think about what everyone else thinks or what everyone else is doing, but to really kind of search your heart for what's important to you and try to find ways to make a difference. And as for getting kind of involved in your own social entrepreneurship type enterprises, that's also something that people often ask me about, and I would advise anyone to try to kind of cut your teeth in another, in an already existing enterprise if you can do that, rather than necessarily all starting your own. I don't necessarily advocate for starting your own social enterprise. It's kind of a tough road. So I thank you for your attention. I'm here to answer any questions. I've been told that there may well be questions. Does anyone have any? Or not. Yeah, so the current model is that we go back a couple times a year, and the coaching, for example, which happens over the space of a year, is done remotely. So we're looking at a model, actually, we're in conversation right now with Scotiabank, because Scotiabank has a big presence in Latin America. So we're in conversation with Scotiabank in Chile to look at a mentorship model where that coaching program, which is currently being done by coaches here remotely, like by Skype or WhatsApp or, that we transfer that to have like Scotiabank employees mentoring people on the ground. But that's not happening yet. It's like the kind of partnership that we're looking at right now. We're sort of in conversation with them. So, yeah. So the question is, in how many countries are we present? So for this exact program, I mean, this program now that I've just described to you is kind of is sort of an amalgamation of several years of different types of smaller interventions and bespoke programs. So this exact program has been run now 3 times in Bolivia and in Chile twice. So, and it comes from kind of programs that were previously run, so sort of components of it were run in Zimbabwe, Cambodia, Thailand, with artisans from Niger, India, that kind of, so different interventions from different places.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. Were there any challenges associated with starting a new organization in a different country with a different culture?
Sorry, I could barely hear you. Could you just repeat that, just to make sure I got the whole thing? I think she just needs to speak up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but just barely. So like
Okay,
project.
I'll speak up. Were there any challenges associated with starting a new organization in a different country with different culture?
Well, yeah. I think, but I don't think particularly. I don't feel that culture is particularly a barrier if you're actually listening. You know, if you're actually in conversation with people and talking to them. I mean, of course, there are some. I think that really the barriers actually are much more kind of infrastructural type barriers, like we can't reach people by phone because there's no phone connection, or we can't. It's not easy to set up a Skype meeting because only like 2 people in the village have internet and or can even access internet or have a laptop or whatever, you know? So I think actually the barriers to entry are that kind of thing. Yeah, to go into another country, obviously you have to kind of get a little bit familiar with what's going on, and we make contacts with, you know, the consulate and the embassy, and we talk to people who work in trade and that kind of stuff, you know, for the government, the various governments. But I'm not sure. Culture doesn't feel to me like a big. It's something you definitely have to think about because you have to be asking a lot of questions. But I think in any case, if you're designing any kind of intervention, you need to be asking lots of questions and listening to the answers. So I'm not sure that really changes whether it's here or anywhere. Everybody. You know, sometimes you look at things and you think like, hey, I have an idea that can work, but you actually have to kind of flesh that out with the people that are, you know, with everybody in who's being affected by it, because they're the people who have a better sense of what works and what doesn't. Does that answer your question? Thanks. Anything else? Well, I congratulate you all on making it this far. So thank you very much for your attention.
So I would like to thank one more time all of our incredible contestants and all of our incredible speakers. We now have the results of the MyVision Enactus challenge, which Pierre is going to just bring up.
Okay, so we can do kind of a small drum roll later on, but first, please, finalists of the competition, come up on stage with us, all of you. There you go. Well, I'm calling them up all on stage because no matter whether, sorry, I'm losing my voice. No matter whether they win or lose, these people represent what we at MyVision and Enactus represent. They represent kind of the best of studio entrepreneurs here at McGill. And so because of that, they all deserve a massive round of applause. And I'm not sure if they've finished doing over there, but we have like small little gifts for all of the finalists. So bring up the gifts, I guess, right now. Small little cactuses. I know it's really random and really weird, but the reason why we chose cactuses is because, well, cactuses survive a lot of stuff. They don't always get enough water that they need to survive, but they still thrive in some of the harshest environments. And that's very similar to how it is to be an entrepreneur. You don't always get all the support you need. You might spend many nights without sleeping, but you're still able to create something beautiful, to grow your very own plant. And so that's why they are getting cactuses. So without further ado, with a little bit of a drum roll, I'm happy to announce the winner. It was actually a fairly close competition, but someone edged ahead. And so the winner of this first Enactus and MyVision challenge is Ugly Company. There you go.
Well, not a thank you speech, but I'll